an army of 150,000 soldiers, the most powerful military force in the world, came to a valley in 1462 and saw something that made them turn around and leave. They saw 20,000 impaled bodies arranged in geometric patterns across the forest floor. They saw their enemy had already transcended the concept of surrender, and they retreated without a single battle. One man had broken an empire without firing a single arrow. His name was Vlad the Impaler, and this is the story of the psychological warfare that changed history. Welcome back to Cruel Histories. Today we travel to 15th century Eastern Europe, to a time when one man's obsession with impalement would terrify the Ottoman Empire itself and teach us a brutal lesson about fear as a weapon of war. The year is 1462. The place is Wallachia, a small kingdom nestled between the Ottoman Empire to the south and the kingdoms of Central Europe to the north. Wallachia was caught between two superpowers, forced to pay tribute to whoever was strongest at any given moment. Survival meant playing both sides. Survival meant compromise. Survival meant bending the knee. But in 1428, a man was born who refused to bend. His name was Vlad III, though history would give him a nickname far more memorable. They called him Vlad the Impaler, or in the local language, Vlad Dracula, the dragon, the Dracula. Vlad's early life was marked by political chaos and family betrayal. His father was a nobleman caught between Ottoman and Hungarian interests. Young Vlad was sent as a hostage to the Ottoman court, where he spent years as a prisoner, watching Ottoman military tactics and learning the art of psychological warfare. When he returned to Wallachia as an adult, he was no longer the innocent boy who had left. He was a man shaped by captivity, educated in cruelty, and determined that no power would ever humiliate Wallachia or him again. In 1456, Vlad took the throne of Wallachia. What followed was a reign of calculated terror unlike anything Europe had seen before. Vlad's method was simple but devastating. He would impale his enemies, not as a quick execution, but as a statement, as a warning, as a form of psychological warfare designed to terrify anyone who might challenge him. Impalement was not Vlad's invention. It was used throughout the Ottoman Empire and medieval Europe, but Vlad elevated it to an art form. He studied the technique obsessively. He varied the methods. Sometimes the stake would be driven through the heart for a quicker death. Sometimes it would enter through the back and exit through the mouth, keeping the victim alive for hours or even days. Sometimes women and children were impaled alongside men, creating a horrifying tableau of family death. Vlad's contemporaries were shocked, not just by the brutality, but by the scale. He did not impale dozens of enemies. He impaled thousands. Records suggest that during his reign, between 20,000 and 40,000 people may have been impaled on Vlad's orders. The bodies were left on display. They were not buried. They were not removed. They were left to decompose in the sun as a permanent message to anyone who might dare to defy him. For 6 years, Vlad ruled Wallachia through terror. The crime rate dropped to virtually zero. Theft disappeared. Murder became almost non-existent. Why? Because everyone knew that theft meant impalement, murder meant impalement, disobedience of any kind meant impalement. Vlad had created a kingdom where fear itself was the law. But in 1462, Vlad's reign faced its greatest test. Sultan Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, the man who had brought down the Byzantine Empire, decided that Wallachia would become an Ottoman province. He assembled an army. Estimates vary, but most sources suggest between 60,000 and 150,000 Ottoman soldiers marched toward Wallachia. It was a force that could not be defeated in open battle. Vlad had perhaps 10,000 soldiers at his command. The math was impossible, so Vlad did not fight. Instead, he retreated. He burned the villages. He poisoned the wells. He destroyed everything that could sustain an invading army. And then, as the Ottoman forces advanced deeper into Wallachia, Vlad made his move. On the night of June 1462, the Ottoman army made camp in a valley near the capital of Târgoviște. The soldiers were exhausted from the march. They were hungry. They were expecting to meet Vlad's forces in battle the next morning. But when the sun rose on June 2nd, something far more terrifying awaited them. Stretching across the valley, as far as the eye could see, were approximately 20,000 human corpses, all impaled, all arranged in precise geometric patterns. Some historians describe the arrangement as concentric circles. Others say the bodies were arranged by size and status, with the wealthiest and most important victims displayed most prominently. The effect was psychological devastation. Sultan Mehmed II was one of the most powerful men in the world. He had conquered Constantinople. He had defeated armies that outnumbered his own. He had built an empire through military genius. And when he looked out at the forest of the dead, something in him broke. According to Ottoman chronicles, Mehmed gathered his generals and advisors. He looked at the impaled bodies. He looked at his own army, and he said something like this: "We cannot defeat a man who has already transcended the concept of surrender. We cannot conquer a kingdom where the ruler has already chosen death over defeat." And so, despite his vast numerical superiority, despite having the most powerful military force in the world, Sultan Mehmed II ordered a retreat. The Ottoman army turned around and marched back south. Vlad had won, not through military skill, not through superior numbers, but through psychological warfare so complete, so overwhelming, that the enemy simply gave up. The forest of the dead came to be known as the Targoviste Forest. Ottoman soldiers who had marched north full of confidence marched back south traumatized. Stories spread throughout the Ottoman Empire of the forest, of the bodies, of the ruler who had somehow made even the great Sultan Mehmed flee, and the very sight of his name on a banner was enough to make men think twice about fighting him. But Vlad's reign did not last forever. In 1477, after years of political isolation and economic pressure from all sides, Vlad was deposed. He was captured, and according to some accounts he was impaled himself, the victim of his own method. The exact circumstances of Vlad's death remain unclear. Some historians believe he was executed by rivals. Others suggest he died in battle. The Ottoman chronicles are vague. The historical record is fragmentary. What is certain is that Vlad the Impaler, the man who had terrified an empire, disappeared from history. But his legacy did not disappear. The forest of the dead became legend. Travelers would speak of it in hushed tones. Writers would immortalize it in literature. And centuries later, a novelist named Bram Stoker would read accounts of Vlad the Impaler and use him as the inspiration for the most famous vampire in literature, Count Dracula. Modern historians debate whether the forest of the dead was quite as massive as the legends suggest. Some scholars argue that 20,000 bodies would have been logistically difficult to impale and arrange. Others point out that the Ottoman chronicles may have exaggerated for propaganda purposes. What is not debated is the psychological impact. Whether the actual number was 5,000 or 20,000, the effect on the Ottoman army was catastrophic. They retreated. They left Wallachia unconquered. Vlad the Impaler teaches us a brutal lesson about power and psychology. Military might matters, numbers matter, equipment matters, but the willingness to embrace horror, to normalize cruelty, to make your enemy question their own sanity, that matters more. Vlad understood something that most rulers never grasp. Fear is a weapon, and fear can defeat armies. Next episode, we descend into the most sadistic torture method ever devised by the ancient world. Trapped between two boats, covered in honey, eaten alive by insects for 17 days straight. The Persian method of scaphism, a death so prolonged and agonizing that modern historians still debate whether it was real or merely a philosopher's nightmare. Join us next time on Cruel Histories. If the psychological warfare of Vlad the Impaler has captured your imagination, if the forest of the dead haunts you, as it haunted Mehmed II, please hit that like button. It helps bring these dark histories to more curious minds. And if you want more episodes exploring the rulers who broke empires through terror, the tyrants who redefined cruelty, and the moments when history turned on a single act of psychological brutality, subscribe now and ring the notification bell. Tell me in the comments, would you have retreated like Mehmed, or would you have ordered your army forward into the forest of the dead? What is the point at which fear becomes more powerful than numbers? I read every comment, and your theories shape future episodes. Until next time, remember, history is written by the victors, but sometimes the most powerful force in history is not a sword or an army,